You know what? We're just gonna do this vertically then. We're going to do genetics today. Everyone's favorite topic. We're going to live stream it so I don't kill my phone storage. So we're gonna start at the beginning. This is where most mistakes are made. You have your iconics. Now you might be wondering, what on earth are these? This is where breeders, I wish they took these three a little bit more serious, because this is where you make a lot of mistakes in the long run. So we have a goody, which is banding, banded for eye circles, nostrils, belly, inside of ear, and underside of the tail are all cream white. Nape is colored. This is where you see, sorry, my bird is on my head, by the way. This is where you see a lot of mistakes being made because this is completely dominant. As you can see, it's uppercase. It overlays on top of these two. So you can get, like an agouti sable point where there's banding in the fur, and that's a big no-no, and stuff like that. So, and then with tan and otter, again, if you layer this over self, you can get, well, let me explain first what tan and otter are. Tan otter is basically agouti, but the body is self. You still have the white belly, you still have the lacing around the nose and the eyes and the ears, but the body is self. So when you put that over this, you can have a self body, but you get a fox when you mix it with a tort, for instance. And that's where it's a torted otter, and that's also a big no-no. And then with self, you normally want to keep pretty much to itself. Ironically, it's completely recessive, so unless you have others, it's not going to show. If you have anything dominant, it's going to be swallowed up immediately, and that's problematic. So that's pretty much all it is. So there's no coat pattern on itself, like a tort. There's no pattern at all. Completely removed. And you'll see that with the most recessive things, it's normally a completely annihilation of what it's underneath, what it's categorized as. So after this, we have color. This is very simple. You're either this or you this. And then, of course, there's the middle ground, which is this. Because this is this, and this can be this. But before I kill you guys, let's make it nice and simple for what this is. This is black. And this is chocolate. I can spell. I graduated high school. This is where you have the most clear-cut line. So if you have something like this, it's a black, but it carries chocolate. I would recommend also you keep these two separate, unless you're working only with blacks and chocolates, like blacks and blues and chocolates and lilacs. With torts, you normally want to avoid chocolate to a degree because you can get chocolate torts, and there's technically nothing wrong. You just don't want to breed them to a chinchilla because it can result in a self-chin, and otter can result in a fox. And then there's lilac torts, which are technically shaded variety, and I'm not quite sure why they threw it in here. But you know what? That's okay. So there's not many colors besides direct chocolates. There's that are chocolate based. Of course, there's chocolate otters and lilac otters. So lilac is just a dilute of chocolate. So it's pretty easy to spot. Like a chocolate chinchilla. The only thing where it doesn't say chocolate or lilac is a lynx. It's just a dilute version of a chocolate chinchilla. But everything else is pretty straightforward with chocolates. Creams. Oh no, that's dilute. My apologies. Going through looking at all my genotypes, and here it is. Fawns in, no, not fawns. Oh, orange chocolates are possible in dries, and same with fawn lilac. Don't recommend it though. Most judges are not a big fan of it. That's okay though, because it's about to get a lot worse. So that's color set for you. That's the second set. Now we're going to touch on the third one, which is where a lot of people mess up, and I have a personal problem with that because I still get bad advice. I work with this quite often. So we have pigments. Pigment. Now most are this. This is full color. Big C. Unless it's specifically something else, which we'll touch on, pretty much anything that is not categorized as the next four, oh goodness, are full color in their phenotype and what they display. Because next we have this little dude, which is Chin. So with full color, it leaves in all the black and yellow pigment, because this controls the black and yellow pigment. Chinchilla leaves black pigment and removes all or almost all of the yellow pigment, leaving a rabbit with black ticking. Everyone kind of has an idea of what a chinchilla or a squirrel looks like, you know. These ones are pretty simple. They're recessive, as you can see, so they need Hemi or Albino to show. Same goes for shaded, which is the next one. So it's CHL instead of CHG. So this is known as shaded or sable. And this reduces the amount of black pigment and removes all yellow. So you get more pointy. So like with a sable point or a Siamese sable, you see they're a little bit more pointed. It's not pointed like a pointed Holland mop, but it is, you know, they do have them tips. And then this is pointed, or Hemi, and it's just CH. It's known as Hemi because of the breed, I'm assuming, or the breed was named after the color. Who knows who came first? Reduces the black pigment to just the points and leaves no yellow pigment. It is sensitive to temperature, which means it will darken in colder weather. And they have ruby eyes. Shaded can have ruby eyes, like my Siamese sable does. Have little ruby glaze. These guys have fully ruby eyes. So not just a little glaze, but like pink eyes or little red eyes. Now we have this, which is Albino. And now this guy you have to be a little bit careful with, because you can have anything, and if these two little pop up together, it is a roux. You need to test breed or look into it, make a pretty good guess of what it is genetically. So how these pass on is different than, for instance, with dilute, because so these two need one of these two to show. So for instance, you can have a CHL that's going to be shaded, or CHL that's going to be shaded, but you cannot have these without these two at all. It just does not, it won't display. You can have doubles. So for instance, a double sable point or a double shaded is going to be a seal. I don't know if there's anything for a double chin. Let me see if I have something on that. But that's pretty much completely dark, so it removes everything, but it is dark over the entire body. So if you look very closely, it looks like a black, but it's very slightly shaded. I don't see anything on a double chinchilla, but that's okay. So the way these are passed on is a little bit different, because one of the parents has to be this, and the other one has to be this. I'm just going to use shaded as an example because I work with shaded. So when you have both of these, there's a small chance that you're going to have something shaded, but it's not guaranteed that every single baby is going to carry shaded out of a shaded dam or sire. It's not like with dilute, where if you have a blue dam or sire, all the babies carry dilute. It's not quite that simple. Ironically, next we're going into is density, which is where the dilute comes in. So let's just get rid of all of this. The amount of... I wish my easel wouldn't wiggle. Such a hard life. Ironically, this is where things get easier again, and it gets harder, and then it gets easier. It's like, you know, an ocean. It's pretty annoying. So people grasp this one normally first, is the dilute. And I personally love dilute, but it's called density of color. Density of color. So it's very simple. You're either dense or you're dilute. So, for instance, black, blue, chocolate, lilac, blue tort, black tort, blue tort, Siamese sable, smoke pearl. Pretty much everything is either one or the other. It's very uncommon for there to be something where it can hide. The only time I've experienced trouble with this gene is when I bred two blue torts and I got a sable point. And the difference between that one and a traditional sable point was the eyes were gray, and and you could tell that the points were a little bit more blue. It was not a blue point though. Also, yes, blue points are a big whoopsie, so try to avoid dilutes and pointed to a degree. Okay, we're getting worse again. We're gonna do extensions and not the hair extensions. I always have a problem with extensions because I work in the completely recessive area. So we have this one, ES. Now you might be thinking, oh, that's completely dominant. This is steel, by the way. It's not really. To quote the Hohenlopp guidebook, it's almost full extension of black on the agouti hair shaft. This leaves almost all black with very little yellow ticking, covering the normal light agouti areas with black, such as belly, eye circles, etc. So it's basically an inverted otter. So with otter where the body is self and there is still the lacing around the nose, the body is agouti and there is no lacing around the nose, unlike with an otter. This is widely accepted to be the most dominant extension gene, but it is incompletely dominant because of this little sucker right here. Meaning it can be paired correctly with other genes, notably the agouti and another full extension allele to display its dominance. I.e., let's see if I can write out a good example for this guy, because this is where things tend to need a little bit of help. So for instance, a basic steel will have this. And that's just all steel. So it's basically ticked. Now you might be wondering, well, where did that one singular E come from? That's what's next. This is also known as the normal. So when people say there's no such thing as normal, fight them. There is. And this is it. So that just means normal or white type black. You know, basic blacks and blues are like this. Let's see who else. Chocolates, lilacs, Siamese sable. That's why you can get a black or blue out of a Siamese sable. Steel, smoke pearl, black otter and chocolate otter, and blue otter, lilac otter. All of the steels have this as the second, and this is the first. You know, chocolate chinchilla, lynx, chocolate agouti, squirrel, those are all these. I don't touch on the wide bands much. I should do that more. None of the wide bands have this. So, notably, if you're working with wide bands, avoid these two, because wide band is a little bit different. So, next we have this little dude, EJ. Not many people know it exists, and I wish they did, because this little sucker can hide behind these two and destroy your project. This is the Japanese gene, aka harlequins and tries, and I highly recommend you avoid these, specifically with torts. Because with torts, you can get a torted try, which is where you'll look at the ears and notice that the wide band on the ears is a little bit darker than on the middle of the body, and I have seen rabbits, specifically mini rex, get kicked off for this. So this little dude needs to be worked with independently, so you probably want to double up, see what a proper try looks like, because it can display the brindle without it actually being properly displayed, like, because you want a little E at the end. Well, technically, if you want a proper try, all you need is this being first. But you'll see people layer this over. I'm just going to write out the genotype for try, because at this point I think you guys will understand it. Because it falls flat because it needs an agouti. So a proper try will be this. No chocolate tries either. Chocolate tries are a big no-no. You need full color. You can have dilute or full density, because you'll just get a fawn if you have a dilute, and there's no shame in that. So technically anything goes here. You can do anything you want here. And then you'll have the E and the J, and then a little gap, and then EN, EN. Because, gosh dang it, a tricolor is just a broken Harley. So if you were to take this E, which we'll touch on this later, and make this smaller, you would have a Harlequin. And those are not showable. So people need Harleys to get tries, and tries are showable, but the Harley itself is not. So it's a very difficult project if you want to tackle it. Mostly you just need a bunch of Harleys and a bunch of tries, or a broken black, because they actually allow that big E up front, because that's where with Torch they're like this. That's where you get the little shading, and that's a, or sorry, I'm stupid. It's an A. I've been working with E too much. You need a big A on front, and Torts are this. So that's where you get the little whoopsies. So you need to work with broken blacks, tries, harlequins to get the established, and you really need to work hard on the banding on this one. So, you know, kudos if you can pull this off. But I prefer this. This is what I work with. And this is just a non-extension. Again, with the smallest just being it not existing. So this is where actually you see the difference between torts and blacks. Is torts are all EE. Same with lilac torts and chocolate torts, and sable point is also EE. So sable point is the torted version, not really, but it's partially the torted version of a Siamese sable. There are not many that are small e. In fact, I think the only times it's different is in red and orange and cream and frosty. So the wide band is also where you'll see EE being just little EE. So that covers that. Now we are getting pretty darn close to understanding everything. So that's the basics. You've achieved the basics. I'm proud of you. Now we're going to layer a blanket over the basics. And then we're going to tackle what fuzzies are, because fuzzies drive everyone crazy in the hollow mop industry. So let's look at the broken gene next. So many people don't know this, but solid is actually the recessive. And I wish, well, not many people do know this, but beginners don't. And I wish they did. So we're going to go on to brokens. So this is the infamous Charlie, which is a Charlie. So there can be false Charlies, but it's easy to prove. Percent color, so you need 10% or less color for it to be considered a Charlie. But mainly this is the important part. And then you have brokens, which brokens are just, I call it shattered. So you take the sheet of color you have and you shatter it over white over the rabbit. You have solids. So easiest way to prove that you have a legitimate broken that looks like a Charlie is one of the parents is a solid. Now if you look at the Charlie, you'll notice solid does not have an E at the end. You'll also notice that it's completely dominant. So if you breed a Charlie to a broken, you'll have a 25% chance of a broken, 75% chance of Charlies. And if you breed it to a broken, you're going to get, or to a solid, you're going to get all brokens. So, or Charlies. So it's recommended that you don't breed, because the only way you can get one of these is breeding a broken to a broken. So it's recommended that you only ever breed brokens to solids and solids to brokens, and you avoid Charlies entirely. They are useful if you have a Charlie try, because then you're just going to get try babies out. But in general, it's just easier to avoid it entirely. Specifically, if you don't need to have broken. And Hollands are very simple. The only time brokens are really useful is with foxes, because foxes cannot be broken. And I don't know how it works. All I know is it works. So correct me if you know I'm wrong, and if you've had a broken fox, or explain to me how that works, because I don't know. Now we're going to go on to the fuzzies. If you've had a fuzzy before, you know the pain. They're normally the best. So it's just the wool gene. This is what we consider it right now. We're not entirely sure if this is 100% how it works. So we're just going to touch on what we know right now. This is what a normal Holland Lop looks like. This is one that carries fuzzy, and this is fuzzy. So let's label all of this. Carrier, none. So when you get a fuzzy, it's little l, little l. So if you get a bunch of fuzzies, chances are one of your guys is this. And these ones, and I can feel it and I believe it, physically feel it, is these guys have a slightly longer coat. It's a little bit stickier, you can kind of tell. But, I've also had rabbits with very sleek coats throw me fuzzies, so honestly, I don't know anymore. But that is basically all fuzzy is just one recessive little gene that pops out occasionally. So, it's irritable, and you can, if it's good quality and the wool isn't half bad, you can sell it as an American fuzzy lop. No shame. But, try to avoid, if you find the person that carries fuzzy, maybe think about culling, as in getting rid of. You don't need to kill the animal, don't worry. Now let's see, did we tackle all of these? Is there the Vienna gene? Do we want to talk about? Yes, we do. So, this is, let's see if I can explain this the best possible way. Bu versus Vienna. I don't know how to spell Vienna because I never use it. We're going to try to explain this the best possible way. So we're gonna start. So this is a non-Vienna. I think I spelled Vienna right. And now this is a Vienna marked or a VM. And then it gets a little bit more complicated because there is a recessive, which is a Vienna carrier, which means that she can throw these. So it's as if this gene specifically is very tucked back. So I honestly am not entirely sure how this can make this, but it can. And you will see this occasionally, specifically in the pet market. But then what is Vienna used for? It's used for Buse, because if you have two little V's, you get a blue-eyed white. And I've never seen a blue-eyed white Holland in person, but I would highly recommend you avoid them if you don't want to fully pursue only Buse, because Vienna-marked babies are not showable. And don't mix this in with any other project you have going if you start one, because then you're going to get Vienna-marked babies, and it's just going to be difficult in general. Same thing goes for the Japanese gene. You normally just want to avoid it. So we're going to work our way through the colors now, all the way through everything. So pray for me is what I'm going to say. So if you understood any of that, this should hopefully make sense to you. We're going to start with color groups. Self. Wow, I love selves, honestly. I'm going to be honest. Selves are great. Black. So self just means this, right? Yes. So we're going to put this here. So that tells you that the body is full and it's not chocolate. Full color. Full density. And a big E. What is this? Very clearly, this is a black. So you're like, okay, cool. Now you understand what that is. I'm proud of you. Now, what is a blue? Very simple. You take this, and you make it a little d and a little d, and e. Got this little thing here, and I have blue. You can manipulate this again. And we're going to make a tort. Let's make a black tort first, and then we'll do a blue tort. And then that tort has a little EE at the end, and now a blue tort is going to be this. And of course we're going to assume all of these are solids because you can just throw on the EN at the end. So self colors, this is the basics. We can get into chocolates in a second. But self colors are very versatile because they're pretty, dominant. They add colors in very softly. All of these are very safe colors. It can be easily mixed with tort, as you can see. So you can easily use black and blue with torts and black and blue with shaded as well. And same, you can also use black and blue with otters because you're not going to get this little guy. So with torts, you can use these for shaded, not for otters. So, you know, that's where they kind of, you can use these two. So these for shaded and these for otters is very practical. You won't sacrifice quality and you won't get unshowable colors. And now onto the chocolates, which this is relatively easy. Chocolate is just going to be this. It's a chalk. You normally want to avoid these in shaded as mentioned earlier because you don't want to get a chocolate sable point. So don't breed chocolates to shaded varieties because then you can get chocolate shaded and those are not recognized. And then, of course, the lilac is just the dilute version of this. So you need a little d. It's a lilac. I think lilacs are really pretty. Don't breed these into shaded varieties again because still chocolate, or chocolates. Yeah, chocolate's right there. So that's the self category. It's very simple. It's, you know, very, very safe. I'm gonna grab a bigger thing to erase this if you don't mind real quick. Paper towels. Because I am getting lazy. So the next one we're going to touch on is the less recessive. So we're kind of going from recessive all the way down. That's kind of how I view it. We're going to do, hold on, my bird's dancing, shaded. Little crackhead on my head. So Lilac Torch are technically a shaded. Classified as shaded. I don't really know why. They kind of do this with torts too in general. So shaded, you know, very simple. Tort. We have big A, B, big C, D, D, E, E. And so with shaded, in order for it to be displayed, as mentioned previously, you want a hemi or a roux. With this one, you do not want to breed any selfs really to chinchilla because you can get a self chin. You don't want to breed any otters over torts because you can get foxes, etc. So that being said, let's go into what I consider the real shaded, and I don't quite know why they separate this one specifically out. So roux and pointed are not genetically shaded rabbits, but it is often necessary to use them in shaded programs to get the two sable genes into one so you don't get seals or seal points or dark smoke. That way you separate them out and you can avoid little disasters. So that's kind of what we're looking at. It's a little bit difficult because modifiers can be responsible for smut or like lack of cleanliness around the nose, such as using the chinchilla gene. So a chinchilla rabbit with a self non-extension gene, it's called a salander or an iron gray, which I'm going to write that out for you. These are smutty and they look like sable points, but they're knockoffs and they're not good. They look like sable points really, but they have a very dirtiness over the entire body. The points are not as strong. You want to avoid that. It's basically manipulating a self chin to look like a shaded, and it's not recommended. Now let's go start with Siamese sable. Now I have one of these in my barn right now, and I absolutely adore her. She's an AAB, and I know she's a big B, but we don't need to touch on that. CHL E. So this big E allows her to throw me blacks and blues because she carries dilute. So then, logically, you know, we're going to do a smoke pearl right here. So smoke pearl is just the dilute version of sable point, or Siamese sable. The smoke. And I really wanted to get a smoke pearl in this last litter, and I did not. So genuinely bummed out. That's what a smoke pearl is. Now, Sable Point is the torted version of this. So, Sable Point is going to be the torted. So you're going to see everything the exact same until we get to the end. It's going to be little e. That's a Sable Point. And there is no dilute version of this again. It's just going to have gray eyes if it's a dilute version of this. So we're going to erase this to make room for the next. Now we have a seal. So just to touch on with Siamese sables, you don't want to breed to a goody because you can get a sable goody. Blue torts can result in a blue point. Otter can make a sable martin, all no-nos. And same goes for a smoke pearl. And for a sable point, no, that was for a sable point, my apologies. Same goes for a smoke pearl and a Siamese sable. Don't breed to a goody because you can get a sable goody, and you can get a sable martin by breeding to otters, so avoid that in general. Now we're going to get on to the seal, which I mentioned this guy previously. Let's see if you guys remembered. You know, so these guys have that little double dude. Full color, full extension. So with these guys, you can breed to a roux because you'll get 100% sables. Because remember, roux is this, so then you'll get a consistency of this, which is a sable. So if you have a seal and you have a roux, you're going to get only sable points out of those two. Don't breed to a goody because, again, sable martin and otters can sable agouti and otters can result in a sable martin. So roux is technically, actually we can leave that. Roux is technically considered shaded, although it's kind of its own because you have this. This cancels everything out. So you can breed to Siamese sable, sable point, smoke pearl, pointed, another roux to get more roux, black, blue tort, depending on genotype, before breeding to roux into your line, because you want to kind of know if it's a goody or chocolate. That's the only time where you really want to know what the rest of this is. So if it is a goody or chocolate, try to avoid breeding to whatever does not go good with that. Now let's get into pointed colors. Ooh, pointed is fun. Yes. So if you're breeding pointed hollow please note that a pointed with a roux will produce pointed with points that are not as, I can't think straight. You can get better points, I believe, breeding to roux. You get cleaner points. So pointed is just, let's do a black point. So for best coloring, you do want to breed pointed to pointed. Siamese sable, smoke pearl, blacks, blues, though these are higher in dominance, and self-roux do not breed into agouti. Non-extension colors can result in torted points, which you know is a tort. So you don't really want to do that. Pointed should not be bred to broken patterns because they will lack boot color, and that is a DQ. So you want them to have dark feet. So let's do pointed. So we have, you know, the iconic. This is just a black. And then you have a blue. Then you can have a chocolate. Then you can have a lilac. So hopefully that makes sense. Pointed, you know, they're pretty, I love pointed. Now let's get into the next one, which is otters. Now remember, this is the tan gene, so if you're looking to improve type on otters, do with a black or a blue. Some people introduce reds and wide bands for the rufous gene because it will make an agouti, it will make a nice coloration pretty much. Don't mix agouti in because it can create future problems. Avoid tort because you don't want to get torted otters. So again, let's start with just the black, and then the blue, and then the chocolate, and then the tort. Alright, and then the lilac. So this is a black. Let's do a blue. And then let's do a chocolate. And then let's do a lilac. So again, you see you don't want to mix steel into this because you want the big E's. You don't want to mix self too much into this. You don't want to mix anything shaded into this really either. You really just want to keep this by itself. For best color, breed otter to otter. Acceptables are black, blue, chocolate, and lilac. Don't breed to non-extensions to get torted otters. Chinchilla can result in silver martins, and sable can result in sable martins. So yes, avoid sables and chinchilla and torts with otters. Okay, we're doing pretty good. Let's get into agoutis. Now, I personally don't work with agouti. I never see them much. So it's dominant to self colors. It is best to avoid mixing agouti and sable, or shaded, because then you can get sable agoutis, often called sable chins. Chinchilla should also not be used with self rabbits. You get the best coloration breeding chinchilla to chinchilla. If you get a rabbit that is, if your chinchilla rabbits are homozygous for chin gene, they will be blue-gray eyes. So that can also be problematic. So we're going to start with chestnut. Now, we see the dominance of the agouti. Wow. All of those are dominant. So you can see why it can become problematic. And now so this is kind of like a castor in Rex, if that makes sense. Now opal is the dilute of this, so you're gonna get A, E, C, D, E. And then you have a chinchilla, which we just talked about this. So a chin is going to be A, B, C, C, H, D, D, E. And now a squirrel is a dilute version of this. So just touch base with chestnuts. Don't breed to sables because, again, sable agoutis, non-showable color. Same goes for opals. You can breed these to black, blues, torts, and blue torts, these two. For chinchilla, you do not want to breed to torts or anything self because it can get a self chin. Sable can result in a sable agouti. Otter can result in a silver martin. You can breed chinchillas and squirrels to other chinchilla and other squirrel because, other agouti patterns like steel as well. So now squirrel is going to be A, B, C, C, H, D, little d, big E. Ta-da! Okay, now we're going to make room for the chocolates of this group. So now you can have a chocolate agouti. Which is just literally going to be the exact same except for a chocolate. There you go. And then, chocolate chinchilla is also a thing. So a chalk chin is going to be a BB. My apologies. C, CHD, D, E, and then there's a lynx. And I've never actually seen a lynx in person. And they're going to be again, chocolate based. So this is basically the agouti version of a lilac because it's dilute. There you go. So don't breed to sables because again, sable agouti. You can't breed these to other chocolate chinchillas, lynx, chocolate-based frosties, and chocolate chestnuts. As a side note, true lynx is chocolate-based. Color, most lynx Hollands are actually smutty creams. That's what people pass off as lynx. Rabbits are shown by phenotype, not genotype, so this is hard to call. And that's okay. So look through the pedigree because chances are if someone's telling you a lynx, it's not actually a true lynx. So double check that. Okay, now we're on to the steel colors. And these things are very uncommon. So it's much confusion regarding this gene. It must be paired with at least one agouti gene and the extension gene to correctly display the proper pairing of alleles on a steel colored rabbit should be ESE. That's the proper. But steel could be paired with one allele of a normal extension, which will extend the full length of shaft. Two steel alleles, which is this, will produce a rabbit that looks nearly black. These are called super steels. The agouti gene can also affect color. A rabbit with self-color will appear black. You must have the agouti gene to get a proper colored steel. Care should be taken to avoid the self-colored rabbits when working with steels. Because if you pair a steel with agouti correctly, if you use self-colored rabbits in the program, you will not know if you carry steel or end up with something strange down the road. So it's best to just stick to steels and agouti so that you avoid having things carry things that you can't see, pretty much. So we're going to start with a black gold-tipped steel. The difference between a silver-tipped and a gold-tipped is on the C set. So look closely for that. So this is a gold-tipped black, ESE, and now this is a silver-tipped. And this is where the chin shines through. Now, nobody's surprised if there's a dilute version of both of these, a chocolate version of both of these, and a dilute chocolate version of both of these. I don't feel like writing them all out, but you can just fill in the blank and, no one will be surprised there. So that's steels. Steels are very uncommon. I would recommend that if you see a singular steel being sold, double check that pedigree, make sure it's a true steel. Because, you don't want to really risk that. To produce a proper colored steel, most breeders will breed steel to agouti. You can breed steel to steel, but 25% of the litter will be super steel. These will look like self rabbits again. But test breeding a super steel is useful in a steel program because it is consistently producing steels. So, if you pair with a chestnut and opal chinchilla, you'll get homozygous for agouti gene, so then you can get, more steels. Now we're going to go on to the wideband, and I love widebands, but never could pull it off. Never seen anybody pull it off. So with these guys, it's a little bit touchy. Although the group in the airbase standard of perfection refers to a wideband group, Hollands in this category do not technically have wideband gene, except for red. Truthfully, they are most common. What they have most in common is they are agouti and non-extension, aka big A in the front, two little E's in the back. The wideband gene also allows deeper color to be more visible. If an animal is truly a wideband gene, it will cover all belly undercoat. This would be a DQ for anything other than red. So if you're wideband gene looking into other breeds, more notable the tan. if your reds are truly genetically wideband, then be careful not to use them with other colors. I genuinely don't understand the rufous, but again, the book has that all explained. So we're just going to start with reds, which these are considered high rufous. So you can see the big A, big B, C, D. Here's the little EE I was talking about now, a fawn or an orange. So for reds, you want to cross with reds, oranges, fawns, cream, low rufous colors. Don't cross with sables because then you can get a sable agouti again. So then the low rufous of this is an orange, and there's technically 6 levels of rufous, so it's kind of a balance. It's not like a recessive thing. So an orange is the exact same thing, but for lower rufous. So then we're going to jump. So depending upon the rufous level, you're going to get either a red or an orange. So now we're going to go on to creams, which is just the dilute version. And then a Frosty. Frosties are fun because there's a bunch of different ways. So for Frosties, so you can cross with chinchilla or other Frosties or agouti colors. Don't breed to self because again, self chins and sable agoutis. So a Frosty, these guys are fun. You can get a Frosty like this. Let me think. This is a traditional Frosty. You can have a dilute Frosty, so 2Ds here. You can also have a chocolate, so 2Bs here. And then, of course, a B and a DD for a lilac. So that's the wide bands. Now we're going to touch on to tries. Tries are not as fun as this. I'm not a big fan of tries. They're difficult genetically. The little EJ gene, again, tags along. I'm going to quickly put the bird back before he gets more angry at me. So tries are a little bit more of a touchy color to get behind. They're difficult for many reasons, mainly because it hides for generations and it can ruin programs, and it's just a little stinker. So, let's get on to tries. Okay, so a true try. We're going to do an orange and black. That's the most recommended to work with. It's the most easily recognized. So, and then of course the dilute version of this where it's DD, that's going to be a fawn blue, so not orange and black. Then you can throw a chalk in there, and then you would get an orange and chocolate, and then you can throw in chalk and dilute, and then you're going to get, so the bandings for this one would be black and orange. This one is going to be blue and fawn. This one's going to be chocolate and orange, and this one's going to be lilac and so fawn and lilac. Breed to tricolors, harlequins, oranges, fawns, and creams. Don't breed to any other colors but those. So yeah, I think that's everything, because next is Vienna, but we already touched on that. So that's pretty much it. Actually, you just finished. So that's the basic layout of all of the genetics that you can learn in one sitting. The best way is, of course, to work with it, because I have rabbits that I knew can throw shaded colors, but they didn't carry shaded, but I didn't know if it was Himi or Rue. His sire just threw Rue, so now I know it's Rue and stuff like that. So you really have to be vigilant and looking out on what your rabbits are producing. So yeah, that is it. The whole genetics of Hollands in 50 minutes. We are proud of you, aren't we?